good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to one of our Globespan Wednesday evening program. We are here with Mr. Timothy Jonas, Professor Terence Blackman, and of Mr. G.H.K. Lau. On tonight's program, we have two segments. We have the first segment will be current news and events, and then we go into the main segment, which will be in light of Adriana's death, the social impact thus far on the country. So allow me to say a few things about Globespan, 6 years at this community service, bringing in all voices, be it political, religious, or even the civic leader opinions. We were able to address concerns and provide ideas so that we could continue to be much more informed as a community and as a country at large. So having said that, I am still trying this as a moderator, and yes, there's still a bit of nervousness, but I will try and move this forward. I want to start tonight with Mr. Timothy Jonas, asking him to give us a brief comments on the situation with Venezuela, also with shots being fired and upcoming so-called proposed elections in the territory of Guyana. Mr. Jonas?
Thanks, Noah. It's good to see you, and it's good to see you again on the program. Thank you for having me. I don't know if you're feeling nerves, but I don't see any nerves, and I admire your courage and confidence in coming out to participate. Thank you for that as well. Venezuela. Our memories are really short, eh? A year ago, there was a big to-do about Venezuela. The government dealt with it well. I am afraid of the court of public opinion, and I'm afraid of the Facebook warriors who sit in front of their computers and comment and adopt tones of expertise that they don't possess. So we saw Guyanese saying that we should respond firmly. In fact, we saw the opposition saying that we should respond firmly to Venezuela and take a hard line. And that's nonsensical. I'm not going to try to be polite about it. Venezuela got a standing army of 100,000. They got aircraft. They got a navy. We got a couple of folk in the GDF army who have some competence in jungle warfare, but nothing else. So one explosive on our seawall and Georgetown disappears. If a Venezuelan battalion lands at Charity or Anna Regina or anywhere in Essequibo, nothing we can do. So when we talk about hard line and ramping up the military and that kind of thing, all we're doing there is empty words and possibly escalating the situation. Thankfully, well, pragmatically, because they didn't have a choice, the government did the best thing that the government could have done at the time. They spoke to the international community. They approached the various international bodies, the United Nations and Organization of American States. They prosecuted their claim in the ICJ. They got interim orders in the ICJ. After a bit of dilly-dallying, they began to give real information to the public in Guyana, hoping that the public, if informed intelligently of the history of the situation, would have a firm grasp and therefore would be able to discuss more confidently and would know where we stand. I think that was well done. And eventually, the issue stopped being front page news and was relegated to the back pages of the various newspapers and then faded away until Maduro, in his wisdom, rattled sabers again by talking about holding elections in the Essequibo region. Now, again, that got all the pundits excited again. I want to make this point. Everyone who's listening here, I'm sure, has participated in elections, even if to vote, and administratively will be aware that to conduct in elections, the first thing you need to do is get a voters list. So you need to do some kind of door-to-door census, get a record of the inhabitants of a region, the population who is going to vote. You need to have a record of those people. They need to be citizens, so you need to have their information, whether they were born there, whether they're from somewhere else, that kind of thing. You then need to establish places of poll for people to go to vote. You need to have employees, have a crew, and this is a large body of people who will physically be present at the places of poll and will be administering and managing ballot boxes, voting slips, managing the population, lining up, seeing whatever ID card they have to prove who they are. If you begin to think about the nuts and bolts of conducting an election, I think you very quickly realize that it's not realistic that there will be any kind of meaningful election held by any entity other than the Guyana government in Essequibo. There is no way that anybody's going to get a voters list, decide who's living where, get ID cards so they know who's voting when they turn up to vote on the day, and to man the polling places. What polling places are they going to use? In Pomeroon, in Charity, in all of those places. It's an impossibility, really. So it can't be done secretly. It can't be done without the population, everybody in the population being involved. So I think we need to step back and instead of ratcheting up temperatures and escalating things, treat that the way it deserves.
Yeah.
I think more importantly, is the news that we have received recently about GDF folk on the Cuyuni being fired at. Now, again, these incidents where they receive fire, return fire, I think there's one injury. This needs to be treated the way it is presented.
Yeah.
It's not people in uniform opening fire on them. It's not a declaration of war. It's not anything that involves states or sovereign nations. This is a couple of people from a gang that probably smuggle in gold or smuggle in oil or smuggle in drugs and are trying to preserve their territory and stamp a place for themselves. And we need to treat it that way.
Yeah.
The one regret is that it's sad that, and it's a reflection on our military strength, that there's nothing that we can do except small arms fire in return and get the hell out of there. But that's what we can do. That is the limit of our military prowess in the region. And I think that truth needs to come home to Guyana. I hear people talking about, somebody said every citizen is a potential soldier. Look, we need to be realistic, but this is one area that I think the government has done a good job, both to keep it calm, to keep it on the radar where the international community is concerned, and to put forward our case in the ICJ, which is really the only forum where we have a chance to be vindicated in international law.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Well, there we go. Just a few comments and opinion from Mr. Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel. I'd like to move on to Dr. Blackman. And Dr. Blackman, our airwaves are charged. There's so many discussions coming in from all different parts, all different topics. But one of the other news that's in the airwaves is supplemental budget request. We just passed I believe, over $1 trillion budget, and here we are 3 months later. Your comments on that, Dr. Blackman, on this request for supplemental additional funds towards the budget?
Well, first let me say good evening, and let me say thank you, Noor Singh, for having me. Let me acknowledge GHKLL and Senior Counsel Jonas and the audience. You know, it's always a pleasure to join Globespan for these conversations. You know, so I suppose the question you're asking me is, why did the government of Guyana request a supplemental budget just 3 months after passing the $1.3 trillion budget, which we had some discussion here on this airway. And you know, I've been thinking about it for a moment, and I sort of tried to make a few calls and get some sense of, you know, what's the thinking here. And so let me first give a sense of what at least I think the thinking is. You know, my sense is that at this point, only about 23 to 25% of this 2025 budget has been expended. And I think the core issue, and it's one that we discussed is the allocation of, you know, substantial sums of the budget. Remember, the budget allocated a record-breaking somewhere north of $700 billion to capital expenditure for infrastructure projects to support the government's focus on development. And I think what's happening is that these really high visibility, you know, high cost initiatives, but I think they're underperforming in terms of, you know, how you get monies out to people. And you know, we've seen the evidence that many of them are sort of behind schedule, and they're unlikely to be completed. So I think there's a bit of politics in this. They're unlikely to be completed before the elections. And so I think as in that sense, I think this supplemental request is really less about an emergency, and it's really more about some political optics, you know, shifting the focus from some of the stalled sort of mega projects to more visible initiatives that give you some quick projects, community handouts, things that can deliver tangibly in an election season. And I think it, you know, it reflects the discussion that we've had before, where, you know, there's really ambitious planning, but sort of poor execution. And I think this is a kind of attempt in some ways to recapture the momentum with some short-term spending. And I wanted to make a larger point in this context. I think that this challenge will be a challenge that stays with Guyana for a while, and it's the challenge of, you know, how do you in some way put money efficiently, effectively into the hands of citizens, and you have to do it with some balance, with some economic efficiency, and that is a technical problem that I think we haven't really thought through as effectively as we should. And what I'd like to see us shift the discussion to, and like to see the stakeholders shift the discussion to, sort of, how do we do this in a technical sense rather than a political sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. And I think, of course, there'll be more extensive discussion down the line on the budgetary issues. So, viewers, ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to cover some of the main items that is in the airwaves. We just touched on Venezuela, touched on the supplementary request for on the budget side. So I want to shift a little, and I have a two-part questions for Mr. GHK. First of all, Mr. GHK, welcome. It's my first program with you being on. And I really want to stick with this 2 to 4 minutes so I could get all of the questions out and become a little more interactive. But the first part of the question is the freedom of information. I know reading in the press that you were out there, you're protesting. Could you tell us, take a couple of minutes and just bring us up to date on what this protest is all about, and have you had any success rate with it?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Singh. I acknowledge Mr. Jonas and Dr. Blackman being here. Our viewers, our listeners, it's good to be here. We've shared a program before, so a slight correction there. And now, yes, I was there for 3 Fridays in front of the office of the Commissioner of Information. So, taxpayer-funded office. It's on East Street. It's not too far from where I am. And we have met with no success. The president has been written to. The matter is going to court now, as being led by Chartered Accountant Christopher Ram, attorney at law also. There's a law on the books. September 2011, it was assented to by the president. Access to information. The objective of the law is very clearly stated: to promote transparency and accountability, to give citizens the right to access information about how their money, their business is being run, how the business of government is being conducted. There are some things that you can't get: cabinet documents, proprietary documents, documents that have some bearing on national security. I agree with all of those. But what about the documents that a number of people, prominent citizens, other citizens, have been trying to get for a long time now from the taxpayer-funded Office of the Commissioner of Information? They've met with very little success. People from Transparency International, Mr. Ram himself, the Clyde Report, the Bridging Deed, Mr. Anand Gulsaran, and the people who are what I would call environmental activists, among others. They have followed the format. They have presented their request, and sometimes they don't even get a reply. They don't even get the courtesy of a reply. Upwards of $40 million is budgeted for this office, and we really aren't getting anything out of it. What I can tell you that we got the police presence. We got somebody I asked. I said, "You're from Special Branch, aren't you?" And he said, "No, he prefers intelligence." Well, that's what we get. We get the Commissioner of Information appearing from behind some curtains, and that's what you get for $40+ million. When we should be getting material that is of substance to how, for example, our oil contract, what led up to this contract being signed, the Clyde and Company report. We've had opposition members who have written the Commissioner for Information, and that has gone nowhere. And so a number of people were out there and expressing their dissatisfaction with the way things are. I was very surprised, disappointed, and that's putting it mildly, that the president did an offensive thing. He said this is politically motivated. I mean, sometimes I wonder where the president's head is, and I'll go very gently on this here. People are asking for what is a right, what is enshrined in the law, and what you get is the dismissal, the contempt of politically motivated. This is just not right. It's not, we're not breaking the law. We're not asking for something that's not allowed for in the law. And this is the roadblock, this wall that you run into.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. GHK. I want you to know that Mr. Rennie Paris, he posted, the Private Sector Commission and GCCI should join the fight because the business community needs information to make strategic decisions for their businesses. And of course, Rajendra Singh, he's claiming that all of those names you mentioned are a bunch of hypocrites. So we've got different views coming in, but certainly it's information that's needed for the country to continue to grow and make informed decisions. So my second part of the question that I have for you to make comments on, it's something that reaches to most of us directly in our homes, and that is the song by Vybz Kartel out of Good Like Jesus. This is the name. Those of you who wants to know more about this song, you could go on YouTube, Vybz Kartel, Good Like Jesus. Now, of course, it's very disgusting. It's very demeaning, blasphemy. You could take every word out of the books for this song. But here it is that he's going to be having a concert in Guyana on May 24th. But I want to flip and go over across the river to Trinidad and Tobago. And Devin, could you just bring up that comment I sent to you from the Minister of Trinidad and Tobago regarding Vybz Kartel? Okay, so here we go. I'll just read. This is the new Defense Minister. Minister Wayne Surge has ordered that the itinerary of Jamaican dancehall artist Vybz Kartel be cut. In one of his first acts of business, Sturge, according to a legal source within the ministry, is prohibiting Vybz Kartel from 2 media interviews and other events. The article went on to talk about, cutting events such as meeting with school children, etc. So here we are, Mr. GHK. You are a man of the church. You are of very practiced Catholic. And we have a song by so demeaning to the Christian community. Yet on one side of the river, he's been received fully. On the other side of the river, our sister country in CARICOM, first act as the minister is to cut and be able to display the disgust with these type of lyrics coming out of these songs. Your comments, please?
I'll take off my Christian hat, which is easily separated from me, and I see Council having a chuckle there. If we didn't, we would not have heard in this country about Vybz Kartel and his lyrics if it weren't for the other fine gentleman. What's his name? Baby Skello? Baby Skello let go at the Hindu community, at the Hindu religion, with his tarnishing of a Hindu deity, and all hell broke loose. And I can see that the people are rightly incensed. Personally speaking, I am offended that Vybz Kartel could think of lyrics like these and actually be allowed to present them into the wider public stream. Having said that, as a writer myself, I understand the freedom of artists, and that has a lot of range. But however, it's not absolute, it's not complete. There must be some either self-check, or there has to be, I think, I'm not talking about censorship here, but there have to be good sense that prevails. Good sense that prevails. And this, we have a ministry of culture here. How do you have a guy like this coming here, and I think it's Saturday, isn't it? The 24th? Yes. To share, and with lyrics that assault a religion that has, I don't know, upwards of 50% of people who claim they associate with Christianity in this country. How do you allow that? Where is the awareness? Where is the consideration? And I think that this should not have reached a stage where this gentleman is here. We need to protect our youth, which is, I think, the Trinidadian minister. And look at whom? The defense minister. Our youths are vulnerable. That was part of his basis. Our youths in this country, our citizens are no less vulnerable. And I think that had to be taken into consideration. And as much as the Christian community, I'm still looking for the outrage there, as much as they should have been up in arms, like the Hindu community quite rightly did. I think we have a ministry of culture. We have people who are, if I were to say a bad word on this program, I don't mean a curse word, or any one of us, I mean, the hatchets would come out. So where is that vigilance that that is lacking and should be there when we need it in the instance of a Mr. Vybz Kartel, a convicted murderer, I may add, and a whole set of other things in Jamaica. Be that as it may, our standards cannot be lower than those in the region. Trinidad, the regional, shall I say, center, and I don't say regional, I mean CARICOM. I'm not talking about Brazil. The regional center of Carnival and Bacchanal could say, hey, buddy, hold up. We're going to put some brakes on you here. And I think that we need it to not outright ban the guy, but say, listen, you got to keep it. You got to keep it down. But at the same time, we must remember sex, violence, sensationalism, and no limits. That's what draws the crowd. That's part of the appeal of the man. But we have to be able to say, well, you can only go this far. I'm balancing religion, artist rights, and just plain common sense.
Yeah. Well, it certainly tells a lot of where we're heading in our society. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming up to our next segment. Our next segment will be the social impact as a result of Miss Adriana Young death. But before I get there, I have one comment. One of the viewer, Miss Dan Mati Lawton, she's asking if senior counsel could just make a quick comment on the artist who will be performing in Guyana in the near future. It's a special request, Mr. Jonas. Would you like to just take a minute or two on that?
Well, no, you mightn't like my answer.
I figured that.
I've heard GHK. I am a firm believer in freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And I don't think that anyone should draw a line. If you draw a line, then the debate is where do you draw the line? So GHK mentioned sex and violence. Every good movie got sex and violence. It's a draw, it's a pull. It's what brings the audience in. So do you ban sex and violence in your movies? Where do you draw the line? You will always offend somebody. That is not a reason to stop someone from saying something or doing something. You can say that they should not interfere with public morals, so they shouldn't be shouting from a road corner. But these people are going to a closed place and you're paying your money and you're going to hear them. And if I'm not allowed to say that I disagree with your religion, then I'm being oppressed. And if I'm not allowed to say it in vulgar language, then I'm being oppressed. So I'm afraid I take a radical approach. I'd like to use an example of Canada. I know in the Caribbean we are very conservative, but in Canada, as you know, there's a big movement towards insisting that you must recognize transgender, gay, lesbian folk by whatever designation they choose, and they're actually passing rules, passing regulations to mandate that you must respect that. First of all, I would support the right of anybody to choose how they should be called. But second of all, I would support the right of anybody else to refuse to call them that. Because both of those involve rights. If you are trying to pass a rule to tell me how I should conduct myself, then you're oppressing me. And if we're going to have freedom of expression and freedom of belief, we have to be very careful where we draw the line to restrict it.
Yeah, and you're so absolutely correct, Mr. Jonas. I don't agree with you on it. However, I would also like to say that I don't think there's a restriction of free speech on the lyric side of it. I think what is most upsetting is that the amount of the way this artist was received and how he was literally put up into the public, and an artist that would speak, with his lyrics so demeaning of the Lord Jesus Christ. So let's leave that there. Appreciate all the comments. I want to shift to the second segment. Before I shift there, I'd like to speak of some of Globespan goals Our goals are
Can
to
I
build a
finish my thought
society.
though, please, Nohar, if you don't mind? Because
Sorry?
can I finish that thought if you don't mind? Because you raised something that's important. A sovereign nation needs to respect itself, and the authorities need to represent the standards, the ethics, the morals that should be front and center when anyone looks at that sovereign nation. And where you're speaking there, I entirely agree with you that if there is any acceptance or any cutting of ethical corners by the authorities, then that needs to be responded to by the electorate by removing those authorities. And to that extent, I do agree with you.
You're back on my
But I
good
think,
side,
Mr.
Mr. Jonas.
Mr. Jonas, you have encroached in what I was saying, that there's a responsibility of the culture people, official culture people, to say, we draw the line here. And that's where I am. That's not should be left to me as a religious censor, then I become Torquemada. So but I think that there is some agreement there. We have to set a standard officially that we are this is our standard.
Yeah, I totally agree. So some of Globespan goals to build a society that's much more informed from all sides. I mentioned this in previous programs. Globespan for the 6 years have been bringing in voices from all political parties, all religious leaders, and also from different voices within the civic community. A society that where we can change from within so that we could affect the changes on the outside. A society that we can reason together, and a society where we could keep hopes alive. Our vision is a country where its moral and ethical standards are measured by the word of God, where its wealth reaches all Guyanese. Imagine a Guyana that becomes a society where Blacks, Indian, Amerindians, and all races value each other as human beings. Imagine a Guyana where her wealth becomes your wealth. If you would like to contact Globespan 24/7, you could send us an email, support@globespan247.com, or you could call us at 631-782-8694. And if you like the programs on YouTube, press the like button and you will be notified every time Globespan goes live. To head to our second segment, I want to start by saying that the backdrop of this segment, the effect of on society, the impact on the society as a result of Miss Adriana's death, it really stemmed from a phone call I made to one of the Black leaders a few weeks ago when the song by Vybz Kartel came out. And by the way, the song by Vybz Kartel, I seen a video from him and his father saying that it was it was misinterpret the way his songs or his lyrics were. So just to go back to the backdrop, I did call one of the Black leaders within the Guyanese community and said, look, this song, when it first came out, it's fully charged. We're in an atmosphere of Adriana's death, and it's really insultive to the Hindu community. I think the Black leaders should come out and condemn this. And he went on to say to me that, look, normally he probably would. However, Vybz Kartel was not given the same justice as others. By pulling him in was to the extreme. But my takeaway from that conversation, ladies and gentlemen, was that he went on to say to me, Noah, and he calls me Noah, that the bigger issue on hand is our society, that we need to fix our social infrastructure and the way we treat each other. He went on to say that, yes, election will come, election will go, and there may be change of government, there may not be change of government. However, unless we are discussing and we are making changes within our society, we will continue to spiral downward. So the backdrop of this segment really comes from that conversation I had with one of the Black leaders. And I truly believe what he said to me in terms of our social infrastructure needs to be addressed. One of the posts that from Professor Blackman is that he hasn't been sleeping. I think in his post, he mentioned he's been going to sleep at 4 o'clock in the morning ever since Adriana's passing. So I want to start with Professor Blackman. But before we go there, Professor Blackman, I'd like to show two videos, and these videos are reflective of what's comments from our fellow brothers and sisters within the Guyanese community, and to the extent where this death has affected so many people across the line. Devin, are you ready?
The guy in the police force that's supposed to be serving and protecting the people, y'all protecting buildings. So you mean for tell me, as a Guyanese citizen, you can't go out with your child, your grandchild, no more for their leisure activities in this country without out in your head if you're gonna reach home back safe with them. That's what you trying to tell me. And the guy in the police force, when y'all supposed to be protecting the people and serving them, y'all protecting building. That's your best interest. The guy in the police force, I shame y'all. I'm tired of y'all. The only thing y'all good at identifying is tint. You get a little tint point you carry in this country, you're a big criminal, you're a phantom killer. But the real dogs, them, y'all ain't going after them, y'all collecting the money. I'm tired of the kind of police force and ask them want to be and then profile that set up to justify the little child death. But oh, grandmother should not care out and grandmother should be looking at you. Y'all should be ashamed of yourself. Y'all days coming. You mean for tell me the only way we could get action in this country is if these scrapeheads them come out? This what you trying to tell me as a Guyanese citizen? Y'all ain't good. Yet again, the leaders of Guyana and the Guyana police force help we go on the international map for something bad. A shame of y'all.
So hi guys, listen, I know everybody have been sharing their 2 cents on Adriana's death, and I'm sitting here at this park, at the national park, and really praying that real change take place, real change. If we can recall, there was this story in the 90s, 1996 I think, when Amber went missing, a 9-year-old girl. You know how many change came about in the US? A bill was passed, a pedophile list is there to show all the pedophiles around in different areas. Amber case is still an open case. They never found who abducted her and killed her. But change came about. There's Amber Alert that is able to save over 1,000 children from 90s to now. I really hope to see Adriana Young legacy live on. And you see all those change makers and those policy makers and all the big companies to really step up and do things to let Adriana legacy live on. All them service providers have alerts when our Guyanese children go missing. Let the law change. Let things work. I really pray for more be done and Adriana legacy live on. It's time for real change in this country.
So, Professor, the first video we've seen was probably a representation of a part of the younger generation, younger people. And I've seen other videos on social media where a mom was talking about her having an 11-year-old daughter and how afraid she is now to go out. So on one hand, we have a younger generation view, and the second video was much more sobering in terms of asking for actual changes that could be made. One of the things that happens in our society, Dr. Blackman, is that we have the 3 to 7 day rule. The 3 to 7 day rule is basically an incident hits the newscast, it lasts for 3 days, maximum 7 days, and then everyone just wants to go on. One of the texts I received today from one of the viewers, once we post the flyer that we'll be speaking about Adriana's death, he sent me a text that we goating Dal. I think we have discussed this, that we're talking about the same thing over and over. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand the text, because here we are, we have a family that lost a daughter, a nation that has lost a daughter, and now it's crossed over where globally they have lost a daughter. Everyone is basically into Adriana's death, and this person will send me a text that we go taking down. How do you speak to the new generation? How do you speak to the people of Guyana? How do you speak to the society, Dr. Blackman?
Well, thank you for asking me that. And I want to say, as I listen to, it's really not me speaking to, it's not us speaking to them, but us listening to what they're saying to us. And I think for me, that was the the essential observation of this moment, that we have not listened to our young people as effectively as we ought to have. And this metaphor of listening is the one that I think has caused me so much. Share a private moment. So when this event occurred, I was in Massachusetts taking my daughter to a college, some college business with my daughter. And my wife and daughter and I were back at the hotel, and she was sleeping. And as I was reading the story, I could hear my daughter breathing, so listening. And I stayed up, and it struck me the pain of, and then I started looking on the internet and seeing the grandmother speak and seeing all of the other people speak and so on. And then it became clear about what the central, if you will, tension in this this thing. Child goes swimming with the family, she disappears in this pool in which she disappears somewhere in the vicinity of this pool in which she was swimming. 20 hours later, the child's body appears in the pool dead. There have been a number of searches of the pool, whether those searches were perfect or not perfect, but lots of people were there all throughout the day. And I think what it revealed was the actions of the police, the report that the child went somewhere else and so on. What it revealed was just the way in which the life of this young woman had the value of the life of this young woman and all of the young women like this. It revealed in a very stark way their value. And I think what we have to do is to begin to listen to these young people now when they're asserting in no uncertain terms that their lives have value. And we have to begin as the stewards of the society to say, let us try to think about ways in which we affirm the value of the lives of the young people. I mean, I wrote a little piece, I saw this, actually I got a call from one of the kids, said, Professor, the young lady wanted to go to QC. And there in her book, she's lined up QC grade 1. And I thought, how did we fail here? And I think the important thing, and we've said this before in a number of circumstances related to Guyana, and I think this is where I hope something changes. We have recognized, we talked about this in the context, we talked about police incompetence in the context of the report from the State Department before this happened. And we said in that moment, we said, we have to take the shame out of our eyes. We have to acknowledge where we are. I said, this is who we are. These are the things that we need to work on. Instead, we pretend as if this is not happening. And I think the young people are saying to us, the time for pretending is over. It's about the kind of country we want to build and the kind of country we want to live in. And I think, I say this looking from afar, so Attorney Jonas and GHK Lau know much more, they're much closer to this, but from a distance, I see the responses in places like Irvington, New Jersey. I see the responses in London. I see the responses in Atlanta. I see the responses in New York. I see the responses in the Facebook groups with various associates. I see the videos where people come all the way from Canada. I think in this moment, we're at that place where we're being asked, we're being tested as a society to decide what kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be a country where a young woman disappears in a pool and, we can't figure out what happened, and there's no clear evidence that many of the people who are involved in this process are either capable or interested in figuring out what is going on? And I think our young people are calling us to account at this moment, and I hope that we can meet that challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for those comments, Dr. Blackman. Mr. GHK, the social impact here, and Dr. Blackman just mentioned that it is the young people that are speaking to us. Interpret that a little further and shed some more light on the social impact.
Well, I'll go further than Dr. Blackman. This is beyond the young people talking to us. This is the blood of a victim crying out to us. The blood of a victim crying out to us for some semblance of justice. 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 I am a walking distance from where the protests flared up into a conflagration on that Monday evening, post-mortem. And I'll tell you, this is bigger than the death of one child. The man said you're gotein dal. So you're extending the 3 to 7 day cycle. We are, when we talk about this, and we are when we write about this, some things should not be allowed to be swept under the carpet. The social impact. Look at that first video. The young person. She's not young. She's young indeed, but she's speaking for an older guy like me. She's speaking for all of us in terms of our disgust and frustration with the Guyana police force, where the first thing that comes out of it is a cover-up or an attempt to cover up. She's speaking about the people who are behind the Guyana police force and empowered it to have the confidence that it can put this trash out into the public and then haul in its horns. The Ghana police force did not become what it is, this monstrosity on its own. It has seen the corruptions that are above its head, that has been part of the cover-ups, that has been part of condoning, and so it has gone down its own road and done its own thing, and we end up with an Adriana Young, and we're saying, and some are saying, well, I got the thing going on too long. Is this how cheap life is? But you asked me about the social impact. Yes, we want it to go away. Yes, we want justice. But there is a cost to that. Are we willing to put in the energy? Are we willing to put in our heart beyond the words that I say or any one of us say here or elsewhere that we write? Do we really want a change and a different society? Well, then it's not an American mosquito moment where we have the attention span of a mosquito, and it just comes and it goes. This is not about an 11-year-old girl, Guyanese girl. My fellow citizens, listeners, viewers, those who agree, those who do not agree. This is a microcosm of all that is wrong in our society. The president goes in an ostentatious exhibition of sympathy. He holds hands. He looks in people's eyes. He gets there within a split second. I'm surprised that the tears did not come down from his face. And then he tells you that some of this thing going on, and maybe it is politically instigated. Yes, but the fact of the matter is that the wounds of Adriana Young goes deep into this society, and you saw that in when 200 motorbikes assembled throughout the day, whether they were orchestrated or not. You saw that with the people who were not willing to listen. We cannot even accept an autopsy report. If we can't accept an autopsy report, gentlemen and ladies who are listening, how are we going to accept an elections result? Have we gone that? Have we projected our minds to these things? Social impact. It has exacerbated the divisions in our country because we have the flames to show and we forget the child, and the flames go back to the stereotypes, and it rekindles the memories, and it drives us into that void. So this is what with respect to the family, the pain of the family, this moment now is there on. Nobody wants to grieve publicly, internationally, but this is what we are dealing with. And the social impact has maximized and it is intensified. And I think it's going to take a long time for us to do this right. The only way, Mr. Nohan, I know you want to come on, for this to start ebbing away is that we feel that we are getting authentic efforts from the highest levels in this country to put our arms around this and to come at a genuine solution.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mr. GHK. Just to read a few more comments. Well, Rajendra Singh, who normally is on Globespan commenting every week, we welcome you, Rajendra Singh, and he does a great job in defending his private interest. So one of the posts he made is, who is she? Giving her more exposure is itself disgraceful. If he's speaking about Miss Adriana Young, I would say Mr. Rajendra Singh, with all due respect, way out of line, bro. He also went on to say that, well, just get a few more comments that basically saying it's been politicized and where is it that the government is at fault? Here it is. Tell us how the government has anything to do with the death. Then we have, I guess I'm going to move on to Mr. Jonas for the next set of comments. Mr. Jonas, is there any way that this program is saying that the government is responsible? I mean, I haven't heard that. I think what I'm hearing from my side is that people are looking for answers. Whatever that answer is, be it that anything happened to her out of the ordinary or not. I think that looking at the establishments, but not making it a government problem. Do you see that differently, or your comments on that?
Well, first of all, Nawar, this is the second time you've mentioned Rajendra Singh. I believe that that is an anonymous account and a troll. So I try to ignore Rajendra Singh. He is on every single program commenting, but you don't know who the person is, and the account is anonymous. So I think we have to identify and ignore our trolls. They will continue to troll. Now, for the last 3 weeks, the keyboard warriors and the pundits have been having a competition as to who can most eloquently express outrage. But I'm sure that everyone will agree that we've reached a stage where we have to now look at what the problem is and what the solution is. And as GHK says, this is bigger than a single death. The death was a tragedy, and no one in this forum, and possibly 99% of Guyana, no one knows what happened. So how do you find out what happened? In a society where the systems work, your first port of call, of course, is the police force. You want an independent, autonomous, non-political police force that you trust to do its work. In Guyana, we don't trust any of our institutions, and we certainly don't trust the police force. But why is that? Why is there zero trust? And I think that that is the question that needs to be asked, and that leads back to the government authorities. Last week, I believe, you had Paul Slow on your program. Paul Slow was a member of the Police Service Commission, which is the body that appoints, promotes, fires, disciplines police. And he and his fellow colleagues in the commission were removed by this government shortly after they came into government in circumstances that drew the attention of the media and were replaced. Why is that? The reason that was done is that the government of the day, and it's not just this government, it's the previous government as well, needs to control the Police Service Commission so that those folk in the police force know that their stars must be aligned with government. Their stars rise with government favor and their stars fall with government favor. As long as there is that perception and that reality that your promotion, your rate of promotion, the rapidity with which you ascend the ladder is tied to government favor, then politics becomes more important than professional competence. And if that is faced by officers at the top of the police force, that immediately filters down to the people who do the day-to-day work in the blue shirts at the level of the ranks. that leads, first of all, to a perception in the public that you can't trust these folk, because one call from a government minister means that crime is not going to be investigated anymore. And I will draw your attention to the Armenian girl who was shot in the stomach on the road to Rupununi. Nothing came of that. How is it possible nothing came of that? I draw your attention to 18 fraud charges, politically motivated charges, but politically motivated charges which mysteriously disappeared when the government changed. Charges for law books, politically motivated by the government of the day, that mysteriously disappeared when the government changed. Charges against Brassington for started in the PNC that disappeared. No charges against the Nunisel folk when the government changed again. If the politicians control the police and the prosecutorial system, then in the police force, political favors becomes more important than professional competence, and there is an inevitable decline of competence. So I don't know if what happened with that poor girl was a whitewash by the police, politically motivated, or if it was pure incompetence. But we certainly saw incompetence, because even if it was a whitewash, it was done incompetently. And the solution is that the Police Service Commission must be recreated so that it is autonomous and independent from the government, so that if a government minister calls the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, the assistant commissioner, or anybody down the line to say, I need you to do this, the police officer must have the dignity and the comfort to say, go to hell, I'm a professional and you can't call me to tell me how to do my job. That doesn't exist in Guyana. And that's where our problem starts. Now, another aspect leading to that problem, and I'm going to be long-winded here, sorry, no, I'm going to try and wind it up, but I want to make this point. If you have political favor, and if you're controlled by the politicians, then the politicians have to protect you. In Guyana, there's something called the Coroner's Act. And the Coroner's Act is mandatory. It's not that you may do it or you have a discretion. It says if there is an unnatural death, it must be reported in the magistrate district, and a coroner's inquest or inquiry must be held, either with a jury or without a jury, like a court, to decide how this person died. Now, right or wrong, that process examines it, subjects the incident to scrutiny, and then puts a full stop at the end. Death by accident, death by murder. This person needs to be prosecuted. It's not done in Guyana. That act is punctiliously ignored. Because if it was not ignored, when the gentleman in Dartmouth, Essequibo, police went into his house and shot him, there'd be a coroner's inquest and somebody would be charged. As long ago as Shaka Blair in Buxton, when they went into his house and shot him, there'd be a police inquiry, a coroner's inquest, and somebody would be charged. The other day, somebody shot in Linden and died, unnatural death. Coroner's inquest. The people involved would be called to court and have to give evidence: who had ammunition, who fired the shot, in what circumstances, how did the bullets enter the body. You can't do that because you got to cover it up. And therefore, we have this decline and no confidence. And that's where we are.
Yeah, it's quite a lot, Mr. Jonas, quite a lot. Dr. Blackman, in your previous program, you mentioned about the opposition and government getting together and discussing a solution. Most of what I just extracted from Mr. Jonas' comment is that it seems to me that there's a problem on the political side of the political interference or control of the police. What do we tell the people, Dr. Blackman? Where can they go? I mean, and this is a question I posed last week as well. If the politicians are to get together, the opposition and government, according to Mr. Jonas, that may not be, because you don't want politicians interfering and controlling the police. I guess I'm searching for an answer for the people, and I can't seem to come up with anything. Where do they go? And when this 3 or 7 day or 1 month news cycle finished, Dr. Blackman, are we to forget about Miss Adriana Young? What about her family? So I guess I'm asking, any new ideas of where the people could go, or what can they look towards in getting some sense of security, some sense of trust with the police force as they go forward in the society?
Well, I think this is where often Attorney Jonas and I disagree. He often thinks that these things that he suggests have gone on forever, that they will continue on forever, and that they must continue on forever. And I take the view that, you know, we change has occurred. Change has occurred for the better, right? And it is a moment of change is on us. And we need to have some fundamental change in the society. You know, maybe I'll go back to the early, we need to become a society that is listening to and valuing the young people. We need to acknowledge that we have a system that is broken. We need to acknowledge that the institutions like the police are no longer working well. And okay, we don't have a specific roadmap, but I think you asked me what I think the people should do, and I think they're doing it. They are demanding systemic change at this moment, and they're no longer willing to accept the status quo, and they're pushing for some transparency and some accountability. And I say we should begin that transparency and accountability with this case. I mean, the police should every day say, this is where we are. This is who we've interviewed. Every single person who was at that hotel around that pool, all of the police officers should be interviewed, right? All of the staff who worked in the hotel should be interviewed. All of the video should be collected. We need to show, I think, you know, GHK Lal said, you know, an authentic thing. I think even though we've heard the expressions from our leadership, we haven't seen the authentic use of the capacity of the state to affect justice. And I think we still have that opportunity. And it's in this context that I've said, you know, this is a moment for our political leadership, for, you know, the APNU AFC leadership and the PPPC leadership to sit down and say, this is our country. And because it's our country, we're going to argue about our economic policy. We're going to argue about, you know, how you want to mobilize the diaspora, how you want to do public education. But we shouldn't argue about some very basic things, that the value of every life is affirmed, whether or not that person is poor or that person is rich, because it makes us a better society. And I think that it's in this context that I'm looking for, and I still believe, perhaps naively, perhaps too optimistically, that we can, in this moment, rise to the challenge, that our leadership is sufficiently wise to say, you know, we're 800,000 people. We've been presented with this great opportunity. You know, let's take it. We have to hold hands in order to take it. I want to say one more. You know, a few days ago, I had a chance to have a chat with Clement Rohi. And, you know, he was similarly not so cautiously optimistic. But at the end, he put the cautious optimism in a sense of, we can't get a divorce. For better or for worse, we're in Guyana together. And so we have to decide what kind of country we want. And the leadership has to lead to the kind of country that we want. So I'm still optimistic that our leadership will wake up with a pang of conscience and do something that moves us forward, that takes us to that next rung on the level, on the ladder in the Guyanese history. So I'm still optimistic.
Yeah.
We need a society that genuinely listens to our young people and institutions.
And I think, Dr. Blackman, sorry, I think we all have to stay hopeful and optimistic. Mr. GHK, one of the comment that came out to Dr. Blackman was that he feels that the people are keeping this issue alive. And am I correct to say that, Dr. Blackman? That
yes,
the people
no,
are demanding answers?
I think it would have already
So
faded away if every single day someone is not saying in some very strong way that something has been violated in this moment, and we can't move forward until we've made it right. And I think that it's not you or me, but it's the young woman that you showed.
So Mr. GHK, keeping that line as the backdrop of this, dovetailing from that line of the people keeping it alive. I just want to bring up some points. When Assistant Police Commissioner Paul Slow was on Globespan a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned that there were no proper crime scene control. There were contradictory reports, mishandling of the body, failure, lack of training, outdated procedures, and going back most recently to you, Mr. GHK, out there protesting for the freedom of information, etc. How would you encourage the society, be it whatever walks of life they come from? How would you encourage them to keep these issues alive? And when I say issues alive, I'm not talking in the context only of Miss Adriana Young. I'm talking about the systematic failure that they have recognized within the police force. And by the way, Globespan has not failed to mention that the police men and women that join the force do not join the force with the intention of having systematic failures or corruptions or so. System in itself, the way of life, has caused them to deviate. And I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying that, yes, circumstances has not been in their favor. But going back to my question, Mr. GHK, keeping in that line that the people are keeping this issue alive, but looking at it in an overarching view, but all the things that's been happening, how do we continue to tell the people, keep this alive until we have system changes that could be able to affect their lives, be it if they're Afro-Guyanese, Black Guyanese, Indian Guyanese, Amerindian Guyanese, Portuguese Guyanese, mix-up Guyanese, whatever it is, how is it so that they themselves could have a society where they are respected from within and respected from the outside?
We
Mr.
either
G?
want a nation, or we just want a collection of tribes, or we are happy with the way we are, an assembly of political persuasions, which happens to have racial, tribal complexions. If we want a nation, truly want that, and I'm talking about the people, and if we want durable change of substance, it is not going to happen because we wish for it. You are a praying man, I am. Prayer helps. But we are going to have to put something more on the table. We're going to have to put something more in the pot. We're going to have to make the sacrifices. Now, we all want what accrues to our benefit, to our crowd, our way of thinking. That's fine. But we have to make some compromises. We have to make some sacrifices so that we can cross the voids, the gaps that are there. The people are keeping this alive, yes, in honor of the memory of Adriana Young. But they're also keeping it alive. They're saying, oh God, no, 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 not one more. Not Cotton Tree again. Not Dartmouth again, or in Boston. Not Quindon Bacchus again. Where there is always a ready story and the quickest dismissal. This is a child. This is not a criminal. This could have been one of ours. And so you're hearing the frustrations and pain and anguish of a wider community that I'm glad has had its moments of cross-racial fertilization, especially in the Tucson area and elsewhere. That we are fed up. The people are fed up, and sometimes it rises from the gut up to the esophagus, the throat, and then it just comes out, and it can't be contained anymore. Trust.
Yeah.
The first thing I wrote about this, Adriana Young said, it's bigger than the police force, it's bigger than the government, it's bigger than us, but we must show that we are big enough to manage this moment for betterment. And the lack of trust in this country, and I speak to you directly, Dr. Blackman. I'm pretty sure you have more conversations with people in this country than I do, though I live here. The lack of trust in this country is appalling. It is there's no trust. There's almost zero. How do you build a community, a society where there is no trust in your institutions? We are talking about a few bad cops, rogue cops. Why aren't we talking about a few good cops on which we can build a basis? We can build from that foundation, we can build an architecture for law and order and respect for the law. The access to information. Look, I don't want to put on my pessimistic hat.
Yeah.
I knew it was not going to go anywhere because it took 20 months after the law was passed in September 2011, 20 months until May 2013 for a commissioner to be identified. Because the move was on to put a fix in, you got to get the right kind of citizen, so you get the right kind of results, which is no information. So you get the right kind of commissioner. So now we come to the Guyana Police Force. The president himself said, we shall have a thorough investigation. God bless you, Mr. President. And we shall have reform of the Guyana Police Force. More blessings to you, sir. And the first thing when he was asked, well, sir, excuse me, what about the commissioner? Well, he's not going there. He's not going there. And he knows why. And it goes back to the point raised earlier about the Police Service Commission and who owes who what and so on and so forth. So already this matter is going to keep brewing and boiling because there's the sense in this country that the desire is to get it off the table and get it on the back burner so we can move on to other things and we will forget about this until the next one happens. I think that the society has to have the willingness to keep this matter front and center so we don't have a repeat of it, whether it's a child or a stranger, a man or a woman, a poor one or a rich one, and so that we can make a start somewhere to get someplace.
Right.
We've got to make the sacrifice. We've got to show the interest. We've got to put in the energy.
Yeah, and I think you rightfully said at the beginning, opening part of your comments, that what type of society, what type of country we want to have for each other. On the note of Adriana Young reaching a wider audience, Mr. Gobin Harbajan sent me a video by someone named Mr. Chris Must List, has 512,000 followers. He's a white dude walking around Tushin and reporting on the Adriana's Young passing. I call it out as it is, Dr. Blackman. I seen that you smile on that, but it is truly something that the nation needs to take account for. Each one of us, every parent has a child, and irrespective of what the opinions may be of Adriana's parents, you know, when you lose someone, you go into this frame of mind, and sometimes you don't really reflect everything that would please someone else. And I think we should give them some space. But the nation needs to be accounted. All of us need to be able to look at each other and say, yes, we have exhausted every possibility to ensure that these grieving parents have some form of an answer that is satisfactory to them, not to us. Having said that, Mr. Jonas, what advice do you have for the people? I know you come from a legal framework. What are the options that you would say to them in terms of continuing to make changes as a result of Adriana's death? How can they affect these changes?
No, I'm sorry, but the people can't. it has to be done at the level of the administrators who pass the laws, who implement the laws, who make the changes. The people vote, and they vote leaders into office, and the leaders are the trustees who should make the system work. So when the trustees get bad enough and prove they're incompetent enough, you have riots and protests and strikes. But to say to your butcher, your baker, your candlestick maker, tell us what system you're going to implement is not fair. As I said, there's a Coroner's Act. When last have we had a coroner's inquest into an unnatural death to decide how it happened? That brings the forensic pathologist, brings the doctor who examined the body, brings the police to give evidence, to shed everything, expose everything to light so that we know what happened. Right now, everything is speculation. And the power to fix that immediately and systemically does not lie with the ordinary man in the street. It lies with the people who have been entrusted to maintain and improve our systems and are not doing it. So I agree with GHK Lal, and I'm sorry to be pessimistic. Let me tell you, we talk about incompetence in the police force. When that body was found, the person who took the body out of, first of all, when the crime scene was established, it was not cordoned off. The people who were present were not identified and listed. So we don't know who was there and who wasn't there. We don't have a list of those people. They certainly weren't interviewed. When the body was found, the body was taken out of the water, put into a vehicle, so that any DNA, any sanctity of evidence concerning that body disappeared. It was not placed into a body bag until it arrived at the first hospital. So whoever's feet was in that vehicle, however many people sat in that vehicle, the potential evidence is destroyed. When the people marched around the pool, dozens of people going through the hotel, protesting outside, the sanctity of the area where an investigation had to be done was destroyed. So anybody who comes now is so hamstrung by woeful police incompetence from the inception that I am as pessimistic as GHK. And I don't want to give false hope.
Thank you, Mr. Jonas. Thank you. Dr. Blackman.
So I suppose I will say, I'll say slightly different from the way that Attorney Jonas characterized. So when I look at the videos that emerge on the TV, what I see, so even at that moment, so I think that something larger, there has to be a larger investigation. There has to be a real, authentic investigation. We saw the father of this child jumping into the pool to take her out, and all of the relevant authorities standing around. That is unacceptable. That ought not to have happened. So in the moment of discovery, there is already this contamination. So I think it's, at this moment, we can argue the sort of minutiae of the detail of the DNA, etc. But what we're seeing in front of us is something fundamentally wrong has happened here. And we need to determine, I think, what a credible leadership of a nation has to have the capacity to say what happened here in a credible manner that resolves some doubts for the majority of its citizens, right? It is a credible action that will address some of these institutional failures that we've seen. It is a credible action that will address the lack of trust in the police and the government institutions, that will perhaps move us a little closer around these questions of the racial tensions. So yeah. I think we have to insist, and in this way I'm right. I'm aligned with Attorney Jonas. The leadership of our society have to take the responsibility for being leaders. And I don't mean that only in the sense of the political leaders who form the government, but I mean that in the sense of the civic leaders who are part of the society, the business leaders who are part of the society. it can't be run like that. I mean, think
Yeah.
about that for a moment. We had almost
Yeah.
maybe 20, I've seen those, we had 20, 30 people who were nominally looking for this child. And it is the father who jumps into the pool first to take her out. Tell me how that,
Yeah.
how does that work?
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
can we as a society just move on from that?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Blackman, thank you very much. Mr. GHK, we're down to the last few minutes, so I'm just going to pretty much call for closing comments. But if I could just infuse what would be nice to have as closing comments. I really, all the viewers that's here with us tonight and those that will be looking at the program over the next few days, particularly as they go into the weekends, a lot of them tune back into the Globespan programs. But I want to give them some hope, Mr. GHK. You're a man of experience. You've walked the streets of Guyana. You know the territory. We know there were failures systematically. We know that there's situations where the police didn't handle matters properly. But what sense of hope could we give the people, Mr. G? Go ahead.
Well, we have got to be the beacons of hope. It starts with me. It starts with what we are doing here. It starts with the people who are genuinely concerned. We've got to understand that as we talk about myself, authentic effort and thorough investigation, look at what we have to investigate, but not with that which is, I mean, it's filled with holes. You're talking about Swiss cheese here. But in terms of optimism, we have people at our borders breathing down our neck. They are far stronger than us. And we haven't all run away from here. As a matter of fact, I've returned here and I have no intention of going anywhere. And there are others, I think, who are of that same stamina. I think Mr. Jonas is going to depart from me here very, very radically. And Dr. Blackman, I don't know where he stands. He'll have a moment. I think we are planting seeds. And we take things to a point. We citizens, me the individual, we the contributors. We plant the seeds, we do our best, we keep our eyes on what the objectives are. We want a nation. We want a polity that is at harmony. We're going to have to work for it. And once there are voices that keep contributing in the public space to and fro, for and against, I think that there is an opportunity, there's a spark for us to get someplace. I think for too long, we've allowed ourselves to look back at the last 60 years. We've got to start looking at today and where we are and where do we want to go from here. If we want to go someplace, we can wish for it, but we've got to have to work for it. And I think that's where I am. The hope is in me to say, I am willing to work for it, and I know others are willing to work for it. Therefore, on that basis alone, once we have those few voices, they can grow into something. Look at the American Civil Rights Movement. It started very small. It started in the spiritual houses, and then it mushroomed.
Yeah.
I think that's an example. That's a standard for us.
Yeah. And Mr. G, to emulate what you're saying about voices coming out, even though the baby's Skella, that song, which he said was misinterpreted, voices came out. The Hindu community came out and spoke against that song very quickly. It's a topic, it's a sign that people are coming out. Now, will we get them to cross over and come out and speak against incidents or issues that are pretty much affecting the entire nation, not only the religious community? Tim, the point I'm trying to make there to ask you for your comment is that there are sparks of organizations coming out and speaking about issues relating to themselves. be it the Hindu community or any other community per se. Those are sparks. How could we continue to get that fire going where there could be a crossover to say, look, Adriana is a child of the soil. She is a child of Guyana. So it crosses over. How could we get there, Tim? Any comments in a hopeful manner?
We are sitting in a forum here with smart, well-intentioned people who are doing their best to find solutions. Everything that we've discussed goes back to lack of confidence in the institutions. And every time we speak of lack of confidence in these institutions, it goes back to corruption and political interference and lack of autonomy and centralization of money. Now, we talk about non-political organizations that come out to speak. They can talk cheese. In this country, we have two large ethnic groups and two political parties, each representing a large ethnic group. And as long as one of those political parties, either one, is in power, in government, and controlling parliament, they will live in their large mansions, they will drive their Prados, they will maintain or do their best they can to maintain themselves in power by perpetuating the lack of trust, the distrust at the grassroots level, and ensuring that the grassroots voters stay loyal, and nothing else matters. So that you will see a continued centralization of power, a continued centralization of the purse strings, greater wealth going to friends and family, and you will see that, and the talkers can talk, and the little organizations that say don't hurt me because I'm non-political will come out and continue to say that, but nothing meaningful will change as long as that system perpetuates, and that system will perpetuate as long as there are only two large parties battling. The large party who wins will control parliament and will perpetuate itself in power and will approve its budget for greater money, although the original budget was only a couple months ago, will give itself more money because it controls parliament, will change the rules, as GHK was talking about, to consolidate its power and its control of the Natural Resources Fund, will centralize and centralize and centralize, and nothing else matters.
Thank you, Tim. And Dr. Blackman, before I give you the last couple of minutes, I just also want to make a few comments that there are not a lot of noises in social media or everywhere, but we must be able to continue to have a conversation in spite of what our different feelings and opinions are. It's important that we understand each other's insecurities and securities. It's important that we reason together, because if we don't, the cost, and this is where our nation needs to count the cost of where we have been in the last 50 years and where we are heading, if our social infrastructure continue to spiral downward. Our cost is not only our status when we go into the Caribbean countries or into North America or Europe, how people see us as a nation, as a Guyanese. The cost is more than that. The cost of trillions of dollars that's moving out within our economy every year. We're seeing 1.1 trillion budget a year now within our local economy. That's what we're seeing. What is going out? Multiple trillions. So to my point, what I'm saying is that we need to count the cost as a people if we are to continue in this trajectory, or are we going to change our social infrastructure so we could affect our future as a nation. Having said that, I think there was one ray of hope also from another religious sector, which was the Christian community. I believe Pastor Joe Passat from New York came down a couple of weeks ago and had a 24-hour prayer session. So we have seen activities from the different religious groups, be it Hindus or be it Christians. There are activities. So Dr. Blackman, some hopeful closing comments within
Yeah,
a couple of minutes, if you don't mind.
I've listened very carefully to Attorney Jonas, and I think he is partly right, but I think I want to go in a slightly different direction. So, I think G.H. Lal said, kind of encapsulated it for me. So he said, where are we? Where do we want to go? And what are we willing to work for? And I'd say, what are we willing to work for together? And I think today, amidst all of this pain and this frustration, I think we ought to choose hope. And it's in that sense that I think we need to choose hope. I see something powerful emerging, and again, I have the benefit of distance. I'm far away. So I see something. I think the voices of these young people, I mean, I looked at this video today with the young man, the father of, and I was deeply moved. But I was also deeply moved by his character. This was not someone. This was someone who clearly understood the value of his life, the value of his daughter's life, the value of the community that he comes from, and the value of fighting for a different kind of country. And so I'm sort of very hopeful about what I've seen among the young people. And when you think about this, is not an educated man in some classical sense, right? These are parents whose dignity shined through. And I think it's that sort of pulled us all together across some of these racial lines, across ethnic lines, across class lines. And so, look, at the end of the day, I'll use the words again, we can't get a divorce from each other. So we're bound in this 83,000 square miles of destiny. And I think what the young people are telling us is that they want a life where every life matters. And they want, where differences are a strength, where it's like a cricket team, where differences are a strength. We want Moti and Hetmeyer. We don't want only Moti, or we don't want only Hetmeyer, because we know we're stronger when it's Clive Lloyd and Alvin Kalicharan. We know that's what our history is. And so in that sense, I'm sort of, I see this spark among these youths, and I hear a kind of collective voice saying, we're better. We're better than these divisions. And so I pray. I mean, in this moment, I don't have the realism that comes from Attorney Jonas. I mean, he has history and the weight of the society going behind his analysis. But in this moment, I pray, like my grandmothers and grandfathers, and I've prayed before, that the legacy of Adriana is not going to be only tragedy, but it'll be like a catalyst for us to move forward. And we'll listen to each other, and we'll act, and we'll take this moment. I was about to say we'll take this moment to really establish a one Guyana, but perhaps I shouldn't say that, because someone would not take it here. But it's act, right? It's not a crazy notion.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Amir Mohammed posted, social media has given the powerless and marginalized an avenue to be heard. And he put a comma mark and say it's a positive. So in saying that, I would really like to thank all the viewers tonight. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you to our panelists, to Devin Bissoon, and we continue to move forward in trying to have a mature, honest discussion where we could reason and be able to build a better society and a better country at large for all of us. Have a good night, and thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.